So now that you've learned about Saussurean model, let us now discuss what is Persian model. So let's begin. Persian model was proposed by Charles Peirce in 1860s. So in this model, in here, Peirce showed the triadic relationship between the representamen, an object, and an interpretant. So what are these terms? The representamen is the form that the sign takes or the sign vehicle which can lead to the object, which is something the sign refers to or the referent, or the interpretant, which is something or the meaning created in the mind. So he divided signs into three, which are icon, index, and symbol. Icon is a sign that has physical resemblance to the thing that it is trying to evoke. For instance, a photo of a dog signifies the actual dog. Next is the index. Index is a sign that has direct relation to the thing it is trying to evoke. For instance, smoke and fire. Smoke and fire have the causal link wherein smoke signifies fire. Last is the symbol and a sign that has no relation with the signifier and the signified. Mostly, its meaning are from arbitrary or conventional rules. For instance, the traffic lights. When we see a green light, it does not signify the greenness of the light. It tells us that we can go or move forward. And on the other hand, if we see the red light is on, it does not signify or evoke the redness of the light. Instead, it means that we must stop. So he divided signs into three, which are icon, index, and symbol. Icon is a sign that has physical resemblance to the thing that it is trying to evoke. For instance, a photo of a dog signifies the actual dog. Next is the index. Index is a sign that has direct relation to the thing it is trying to evoke. For instance, smoke and fire. Smoke and fire have the causal link wherein smoke signifies fire. Last is the symbol and a sign that has no relation with the signifier and the signified. Mostly, its meaning are from arbitrary or conventional rules. For instance, the traffic lights. When we see a green light, it does not signify the greenness of the light. It tells us that we can go or move forward. And on the other hand, if we see the red light is on, it does not signify or evoke the redness of the light. Instead, it means that we must stop. So he divided signs into three, which are icon, index, and symbol. Icon is a sign that has physical resemblance to the thing that it is trying to evoke. For instance, a photo of a dog signifies the actual dog. Next is the index. Index is a sign that has direct relation to the thing it is trying to evoke. For instance, smoke and fire. Smoke and fire have the causal link wherein smoke signifies fire. Last is the symbol and a sign that has no relation with the signifier and the signified. Mostly, its meaning are from arbitrary or conventional rules. For instance, the traffic lights. When we see a green light, it does not signify the greenness of the light. It tells us that we can go or move forward. And on the other hand, if we see the red light is on, it does not signify or evoke the redness of the light. Instead, it means that we must stop. So, we must not compare the models of Saussure and Peirce since the both have different perspectives and semiotics. We must keep in mind that Saussure is a linguist and focuses on the social function of linguistic science and debunks the idea that language system is based on references to the real world. While Peirce, as a logician, focuses on the logical function of signs theorizing references to the world.
Hi guys! Now let us proceed in discussing the sign relations in Peircean model. According to Peirce, there are two types of signs. The first one is the conventional sign, and the second one is the natural sign. Conventional signs are the words or the names we give after things. Let's say, for example, I can say that this is a book because the book is the sign or the word we name after these thick thing. And the other type of sign is natural sign. These are the pictures which resembles what they depict. And it is also described as something that lacks intentionality and are interpreted as signs by virtue of an immediate link to what they signify. Let's say, for example, smoke, which indicates fire, and a footprint, which indicates that an animal has passed by in that pathway. In the Peircean model, there are three different kinds of sign relations. And those are one, symbolic, second, iconic, and the third one and the last one is indexical. Symbolic relations are those relationships that are fundamentally unmotivated, arbitrary, and purely conventional, rather than direct physical connection or resemblance. So it must be agreed upon by a certain community in order to call it a sign. Let's say, for example, language in general. And a great example would be an alphabet, or the words such as adjective, noun, and also a great example would be the flag of the Philippines and the traffic signs we use in traffic. The second type of sign relation is iconic. This is described as something that directly perceived a resemblance or imitation. These have recognizable similarities or similar qualities such as in appearance, which means in visual characteristics. The second is the feeling. Third one is the smell or olfactory, I don't know. But the third one is the taste. And the third one is the auditory or a sound resemblance. Example givens would be our portraits, a cartoon, a radio drama sound effect of a door closing. And metaphors is also belong to this kind of sign relation. The third kind of sign relation is indexical. It is based on direct connection, whether physical or causal. Examples are natural signs. Let's say, for example, smoke, thunder, footprints, echoes. In medical, the pulse rate of a person, the rushes, which indicates that we have a disease in our skin. Also, measuring instruments such as clock and thermometer, as well as signals, a knock on the door, which is a sign that someone is behind that thing. Also, pointers, whenever I point you, I am indicating you. And personal trademarks such as would be gestures, like whenever, for example, whenever I am reporting, like whenever, like that. And that is a great example of an indexical sign relation. Now, in Peircean model, according to the reference, nothing is intrinsically a symbol, an icon, or an indexed. And it is according also to the reference that the representamen, which is the sign value, can in different contexts involve different sign relations. The sign relation also differs according to the type of interpretant in the context or the process or semiosis on any particular occasion. The use of the three sign relations is not limited to Peircean approach. Let's say, for example, in structuralist and post-structuralist discourse. These sign-object relation are also or often imported to a Saussurean dyadic framework, which means that it can happen in the concept of signifier and signified. While Jacobson absorbed a pure Peircean semiotic sign relation, Umberto Eco, a semiotician who is greatly influenced by Peirce, criticizes the concept of referential realism, and like Saussure, believes that the referent or the object itself is an abstract entity or immaterial, and that the real object corresponding to the sign is absolutely irrelevant to any semiotic purpose. Reference into cultural world. In iconism or icon, the perception is coded and is in relation to resemblance between an image and its referent. In indexes or indexical, the conventional signs are inferred from repeated personal experiences, while Saussure disregards the difference between motivated and arbitrary signs in the sign relations. Now, according to Peirce, there are three. Wait, I guess I was wrong. It wasn't Saussure who disregarded the difference between motivated and arbitrary sign. It is Peirce rather, or I don't know. Am I overthinking? But no. Let us now proceed. Peirce's three fundamental ontological theories explains the irreducible triadic basis of signs. I'm not going to further discuss these concepts because it is quite difficult to understand these concepts. But since we are in reading class, it is your obligation also to take a look at these terms. In the three fundamental ontological theories, there are three. As what I've said a while ago, there are three. First one would be the firstness, or the reflected, or what is reflected in a sign's reference to itself. The secondness would be the reference to which object, and the thirdness would be the reference to the mediating role of interpretant. And that ends our discussion in sign relations.
The Jacobson model had 6 elements or factors, namely the context, the message, the addresser, the addressee, the contact, and the code. Roman Jacobson, despite being a critic, adopted the Saussurean sign. Since every linguistic unit is bipartite or has 2 parts, one is the sensible and the other is the intelligible. Saussurean model or the Saussurean idea interpreted this as the signifier and the signified, while Jacobson defined this, or his preferred terms to this, are signans and signatum. The signifier to Saussure is a mental representation of an object, while Jacobson's signans is a directly perceptible material form. This means that for every word, every person has a different interpretation or an object in mind for that. since the linguistic sign involves the indissoluble dualism of sound and meaning. This means that everything we hear, we have automatically something in our mind for that. For example, a pen. We all know what a pen means, but that doesn't assure everyone that we have the same image for a pen. For example, this is the image of a pen for me, but for others it could be in color purple or in different a brand or whatsoever. But Jacobson became a key adopter and the promoter of the Peircean ideas, and he had to equate the signifier to Peirce's immediate interpretant. And on one occasion, he referred that there are two sets of interpretants to interpret the sign, which is the code and the context. The context is also referred as the referent to the Peirce's model. He sought to incorporate into the dyadic model the special quality of Peirce's interpretant, referring to the signified as the translatable or the interpretable as part of the sign. Jacobson insists that in spite of attempts to revise the necessarily twofold structure of the sign, its constituent parts, which are the signifier or the signans and the signified or the signatum, scholars believe that this remains the soundest and safest base for semiotic research, since it's very simple to understand that there are parts and a two-way structure in communications. Although he had different principles with Assure, especially in structuralism, Jacobson's stance on sign model helped cultural theorists to absorb Peircean influences without the transformation of the dyadic model, which is very important since the differences and the incompatibility of the models and of Saussurean and Peircean models really made scholars choose sides between the two. But scholars and practitioners like Jacobson, he tried to synthesize or make a synthesis out of Saussurean and Peircean model through his own model, and scholars like him tried to draw something from both of the models. Now, this concepts has helped theorists and scholars to further their study and their researches about science, about the structure of communications, that actually help students and the future scholars.
So, symbolicity is simply about the conventional sense of symbols where in order to interpret one, it is needed to have learned the relevant representational. To further explain symbolicity in a way where everyone can understand, let us have the example word man. In the word man, there is no obvious sign that signifies a man. But what makes us think that the word man represents an adult male? Now, we interpret symbols according to a habitual connection, a rule, or a law. Therefore, the word man represents a man since the society agrees upon its meaning through the general or collective ideas.
Hi guys, today we'll talk about the structural linguistics and its implications to language teaching.
Yeah, and it is a research made by Ermwati and Hume of 2014.
In this study, the authors have defined the term linguistics and its four key concepts in language teaching as language of instruction. These four concepts are language, learning, teaching, and context. Also, the authors have explained that language teaching requires concept of nature of language, while teaching language requires the view of the learner and about the nature of the language. It only implies that language teaching and teaching language should be viewed in a context and background. The researchers have also defined structural linguistics and its characteristics based on familiar behaviors. Language is in the form of speech, sign system, and it is a factor of habit. Also, language is a row of syntaxmatic and paradigmatic, and the analysis of the language should be descriptive.
Language teaching is not possible when we are going to only consider only one approach. In language teaching, we need to also consider different theories, different methods, different techniques, different strategies in teaching the language, so that the transmission of the learning from the teacher to the student in regards to language teaching is really effective. There is a linguistic finding that can be applied in language teaching. There is a linguistic finding that can be applied in language teaching, and that is called linguistic findings model structuralism. No, in this structuralist model, no, it is said that language has this observability characteristics, which uses descriptive kind of teaching. No, in description or in descripting certain utterances, we are taking note of noting what is observable in a certain space that we occupy in our time and in our own pleasure. Talking about observability, there are four types of observability in language. No, number one is the phonological system, phonosyntaxis, morphology, and syntax. The idea here is we are going to emphasize the idea of observation. No, observation is the key. Now, when we are going to give distinctions on the structures of the language, structures of the words, the structures of the sentence, we need to further observe critically how the words and sentences are being structured, so that when we are going to teach this to our students, then we have the full grasp and mastery of teaching the language itself. There is emphasized working principle of linguistic structuralism here, and that is linguistic structuralism as being taxonomical. When we're talking about being taxonomical, we are merely focusing on the chopping out or dividing certain units of language, from sentences or from paragraphs to sentences to phrases to words to morphemes to and up to the smallest unit of thought. And in taxonomizing these sentences or parts of language, there is a model called structural linguistic analysis model and smallest element analysis or ultimate constituent analysis model, in which the sentence, according to this model, the sentences are made up of layers of words or thoughts that which has its pinaka-component. And what we're going to do there is to critically observe it and taxonomize it, so that we are able to infiltrate and inject ourselves into the intricacies of certain utterances that we're going to discuss.